All right, guys, we are back with another episode of Pound for Pound. I am the Nigerian Nightmare, Kamaru Usman. And today, my co-host, Mr. Henry Cejudo, is stuck in Paris at the Olympics trying to get back. But I got a great replacement.
A Shadowline production.
A man has done everything there is to do in the sport of wrestling. As most of you might not know, I started in wrestling. And today we have a very distinguished guest, multiple time. I mean, he's won just about everything at every level, from NCAA titles to high school titles to middle school titles to kids wrestling titles to Olympic titles and world championships. Allow me to introduce special guest, the Magic Man. I don't know if you still go by that because now you're a big dog. You're head coach. The Magic Man, David Taylor, my man.
Good. Thank you for the introduction. That was nice.
So we kind of missed each other just a little bit. You know, you were coming into to freestyle in the training center right when I was just phasing myself out. I was there for about 2 years, didn't spend too much time. And you came in guns blazing. I feel like that class of guys that came in, like yourself, Jordan Burroughs, Kyle Dake, you guys came in guns blazing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we definitely overlapped a little bit because I spent a lot of time out there as a kid. You know, I would go out there. Now they have the development programs for these kids. You know, this is why our country does so well at the age group level. But back then, it didn't exist. So I spent a lot of time out there. You know, I'd go out for a week of summer and stuff. So I was there. I was just a little fly on the wall, running around and trying to grab people and learn some wrestling and things like that. So, well, yeah, it's cool. I mean, I think that's how wrestling is. You know, it's just it's a tight circle. It's a small. You know, it's something where you run into everybody. The relationships that you're going to have for a long time. You know, there might be different generation gaps, but we're all doing the same thing on that same path.
Yeah. Where are you right now?
I'm in my office here at Oklahoma State.
You're in your office. Yep. Okay. So speaking of being in your office, you're supposed to be somewhere right now. Like, I'm sure the rest of the world feels exactly how I feel and how I felt watching it happen at the trials. You're the defending Olympic champion, and you're not at the Olympics right now. How does that feel for you?
Yeah, it's tough. I think, you've competed at a high level. You've been competing at a high level for a long time, and the margin of error, at that level was small. And, on that day, it just wasn't the first time in a long time, where I didn't perform very well in Olympic trials, and something I look back on and replay in my head. But I think that a lot of it comes down to fire and drive. In wrestling, there's it's a fine line between being the best in your country, being the best in the world. There's not a lot of things that separate that. Fire is probably the biggest one. And I won the Olympics in Tokyo in 21. And as time went on, it got harder and harder to replay, and recreate that fire, that I had at that time, that lifelong journey. And this year, I had 3 kids, and I had different irons in the fire, and I think just caught up to me. It kind of caught up to me at the trials, and I just didn't perform very well, and that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch all of the matches, obviously, because I just got so much going on in life nowadays. But I did see the news, and I did go and replay and see that the final moments of that match, to where I was as shocked as anybody. Because, like you just mentioned, it's very rare to see David Taylor not compete his best. And you've been winning for a long, long time, as I just read off, all the way since you were a kid. You've been winning at the highest level. So to see something like that, or hear about something like that, I was shocked. I was like, there's no way. okay, maybe there's gonna be something's gonna happen. Maybe there's gonna be a bid. I was almost in disbelief. But I want you to talk about, because your opponent who you lost to in the trials wasn't a newbie. He wasn't someone that was unfamiliar to you, because yes, you competed at Penn State University and you stuck around there and trained for your international career at Penn State University. So you've been wrestling him all of his career as a collegiate athlete, pretty much, it feels like. So how much do you think that played a part in him ultimately figuring out a way to go out there and get the win against the defending Olympic champion?
Yeah. Aaron Brooks is a good kid that's, been super talented. I won my first world championship. I was 28 years old. And at that point, Aaron was a senior in high school, I think. Senior in high school, or he may be, senior in high school. He was living at the training center at the time. And, he was, we were training with him, and he was coming to Penn State. Man, this kid's pretty unique and pretty special. And, he went on to have success in the age group levels, all the way through his career. And, just finished winning 4 national titles for Penn State. Aaron, I took as my training partner to the Olympics in 21 to Tokyo, and I think in that process, the guy that I had to compete against in my career, Hassan Yazdani from Iran, we wrestled 6 times. He or I have won every world or Olympic gold medal at 86 kilos since 2017, between the two of us.
Wow.
So he was a guy that I had to compare against. And in that process, Aaron was a guy that had a lot of similar skill sets to Yazdani. And, in coming there, he was able to see the Olympics and be a part of that. And I was a partner in the Olympics in 2016 for Jaden Cox. So I think there's a lot of benefit to going as a training partner, when you're a little bit younger in your career, because you get to see it. You get to see the Olympics. You get to see what goes into it. You get to train with guys when they're vulnerable and they're getting ready to compete at the highest level. And I think Aaron came back from that obviously focused, knowing that, okay, well, David's a guy I got to beat, to be world or Olympic champion. And, we're in the same room, moving forward, same resources, same training situation, I'm towards the tail end of my career, and he's just getting started, and I think, so there are definitely some of those factors that go into it, but at the end of the day, it's just Aaron, he had a great tournament, he had overcame some adversity earlier in the tournament, where he was losing and found a way to win. And then in those finals matches, the best 2 out of 3, he had a very good game plan and he executed really well, and I think as a competitor, it's hard to, be beat, when you don't lose very often. I hadn't lost since 2000. I lost 1 time since 2017 in the World Finals of 2022. So I think that all those factors, kind of come together. You got a young kid, extremely hungry, full of fire, believes he can do it. And I just wasn't my best performance, and you just in wrestling, you get that one time a year where you're at the trials, and there aren't, it's not like track and field where you get, 3 guys, if you got 3 best people in the world and they can all run against each other in the 100-meter finals, in wrestling, you get 6 weight classes and you get 1 representative to go. I just didn't get it done, which is tough.
Like you mentioned, there's good things that come from that there's also the flip side of those things that come from that, which is, as you mentioned, Jaden Cox gave you an opportunity to bring you to the Olympics. And that gave you an opportunity to kind of see where you wanted to be, what you've been working for. And in most cases, that if you're determined and you're one of those special few, it lights a fire underneath you. So when you come back, it's a different focus, it's a different motivation, and you run with it. And it looks like you 100% did that. And now you gave that same opportunity to Aaron Brooks, and it looks like he came back focused, sharp, and he was able to go grab that NCAA title again. And then able to, on the flip side, which it kind of worked the reverse, is you happen to be the guy that he had to get through in order to continue on his journey and get to the Olympics and potentially be an Olympic champion. Now, obviously, I know that your room over there in the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, that room is a special room because you guys have one of the greatest, if not the greatest, collegiate wrestler ever in American history, in Cael Sanderson. I mean, how do you think that philosophy, his philosophy, plays a part in getting you guys prepared for these type of situations to when you get out of college and you hit the ground running when it comes to the international scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of in your era of wrestling, USA Wrestling kind of went through a little bit of difficulty. We were going to World Championships, we were going to Olympic Games, and we just weren't having the success as a country that we had been accustomed to having. And there was some plans that were put in place, and the one thing was establishing these Olympic regional training centers. So instead of centralized training in Colorado Springs where everybody lives and trains there, it got spread out across the country. And these Olympic regional training centers started to develop. I graduated high school in 2009 and went to Penn State, and that was the beginning of the RTC era, where guys started to train regionally. And so I graduated Penn State and then joined the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. And at the time, the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club was just getting started. We had a few athletes that had that were training there that were really good. Tayon Ware, Les Sigmund, Jake Warner, Franklin Gomez, Jaime Espinal, and they were good. They were good partners for us in college. And they were in 2012, Jaime was a silver medalist and Jake was a Olympic gold medalist that year. So it kind of showed like, all right, this is a good resource to the college team, but also it's these guys are kind of paving the path for, as we get done, we can jump in there and be a part of that success. And I graduated and jumped into Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, and it was a big reason that I was able to have success and prolonged my career, a way to support my family and train. And but when you train for a long time, I graduated in 2015. 9 years after graduating, you start the next generation of guys that come through. And so now Penn State during that period of time, and I've been very successful. And with all those guys, those talented guys, they stuck around as part of the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. So this year, the Olympic trials, they have 5 Nittany Lion Wrestling Club wrestlers wrestling in the Olympics, all training in the same room together. We had multiple weight classes where, you had multiple guys in the same weight, but wrestling each other in the finals. So I think it's you look back and, the success that was created was because of that competitiveness in the room. And, Coach Cael and staff had, they did a good job developing talent over a long period of time. And towards the end, you also then had really high level talent, Kyle Snyder and Kyle Dake and Thomas Gilman that trained elsewhere that also came in. So you had, the guys that were graduating sticking around, and you had people seeking out the best and trying to be a part of that. So yeah, it kind of came to all in this trials. Obviously it was very competitive, really centralized amongst the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. But I think as time comes on, and timing is everything, the Oklahoma State wrestling job is a premier job in wrestling. It's a tradition. They've won 34 national titles. John Smith, who was 6-time world champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, a guy that we looked up to.
Wait. Don't run off the stats yet, because that's very important. I want us to go through that stats, because this is obviously very, very important. It's one of those major things where you're at in life right now. I want to finish off from this. Have you been watching the Olympics?
Yeah, I've been watching.
How are they doing?
We have a finalist, Medalist. She's 20 years old. She's in the finals. She'll be wrestling actually this afternoon. Right. Then Sarah Hildebrand was in the semis. Her biggest competitor, Yuri Suzuki, who's been a monster. She hasn't lost an international match in her career. She lost first round. So Sarah Hildebrand, She has the girl, I believe, from Mongolia that beat her last year at the World Championships, but she's beaten before. So if she wins, she's got a great chance to be an Olympic gold medalist here. So we're off to a really good start right now.
How are you expecting Team USA to do? Because there's a lot of young talent in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're a gold medal threat at all 6 men's freestyle weight classes. You just got to go out and perform well, But I think that a medal at every single weight class, I think would be the standard for the team. I would say, it's a time in history where 6 gold medals is it's a feasible task. We have a couple tough semifinal draws, quarterfinal draws where that's kind of like the Olympic gold medal match based on the way the seeds are at. So some of the guys are going to have to be ready earlier, some of them a little later. But overall, I think the expectation is 6 gold medals. I think that's where that's a skill set. That's the expectation right now, and speaks to the depth of the United States and just their preparation. So, I mean, looking forward to watching them wrestle.
Absolutely. I feel the exact same way because, like you mentioned earlier, I was on the tail end of that. The dissolution of just basically everyone in a centralized location to train for these Olympics or the World Championships. So I was in that process of Zeke Jones phasing out and Bill Zadok coming into his own, and all these different regional training centers popping up everywhere. And I mean, it's been a fantastic thing because you look at the results of what the U.S. were like, of what the U.S. is getting right now, as opposed to where we were at, to where it was struggling to kind of get on the podium at each weight class. Of course, we've always had those studs here and there, but struggling to get on the podium. And it's difficult to live at the training center. It's difficult because, and I know this, to be behind the walls of the OTC, like we call it, it's difficult to live like that year round, day in and day out, especially when you come from a community like the college scene, where you're in your own house, in your own bed, and you're able to go train and you're motivated by being able to see your friends and see everyone and still go and compete. That's a very difficult task, to just leave all of that and be stuck behind the walls of the OTC and have to go compete internationally and win an Olympic medal.
Yeah.
How were you able to, I mean, what was it for you as far as being at your regional training center as opposed to potentially becoming an Olympic training center resident?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really. I mean, just because of the formula that was in place, just men's freestyle, we just didn't have people that were training at the training center anymore. It was regionally focused, and it was a model that was successful. Men's freestyle won the team championship in 2017 in Paris, and then we've won the 2022 and 2023 team titles. So going into Paris, so I mean, it's a model that's working. Guys are training. It's a big attribute to the college programs. It's a long-term plan for athletes that are have that aspiration of being the best in the world. And what's really cool is in my era, I was watching people do it, but now these kids are watching a lot of people do it. I mean, we're winning. We're in the finals of half the weight classes. We have a chance to win 6 Olympic gold medals. So it's. I remember as a kid looking at the Olympics, and you have 1 gold medal match. Some years no gold medal matches. And then now these kids potentially watch six guys they looked up to watching wrestling and achieving their dream. So yeah, I mean, I think the model has been successful. There's been a lot of development and emphasis, into the teams and starting at the age group level and working all the way up. So it's the golden era of USA Wrestling. We were very successful, in the 80s and the 90s. And I think in the 2000s, we were down a little bit, but, 2016, 20, 24, LA in 28, I mean, we're talking about some like historic teams. So it was fun to be a part of that, and it's fun to have contributed to that. And it's a good time. So hopefully everybody's watching.
What you just mentioned, representation is big. And kind of in my era, when you're watching and there's not a a guy representing the country from your weight class, it kind of gives you this sense of, is it possible? Of course, you want to be a champion. Of course, you think you can get there, but representation is important. And I think that's what, your era, guys like yourself has proven and shown, because now you've got the young gun, Aaron Brooks, in your position going out to chase the Olympic medals. So I completely agree with you. I think the formula is working. We are a threat at every weight class right now. And I think it's only something that's just going to continue to just fuel American wrestlers. And you're right. I think 2028, potentially, we might be looking at, maybe not at this point, then you go to not losing a match.
Well, it's possible in this Olympics, it's obviously we'll
Really?
see. I mean, I think, it's one of those things you throw around, but, 6 gold medals, 6 weight classes, it's possible. And it's just the standard. It's just like anything else, it's like an MMA and fighting, right? You go out and win, and you set the standard, and then that's just like what people are aspiring to. It's just like in wrestling.
Right.
It's like as we do better and better, then just being an Olympian at one time was like, man, this is a great life success, or being an Olympic medalist. It was a great. Now it's just like everyone's aspiration is gold. You go make a world team,
Right.
it's winning. It's not like you walk home with a medal and you're like disappointed. You walk home and you got 9 medalists and you're the only one that didn't medal. You're like, shoot, I was good enough. I just didn't have it that day. So I think it's pretty wild. That's just the expectation of being a USA wrestler right now. You go and you're the country favorite to win almost every single weight class. If you're not favored, you're definitely right there. It's just fun. It's a fun time. It's just we all get in the sport to succeed at the highest level, and we're doing that, really well right now.
And like you mentioned, winning becomes a part of that. It becomes a part of you, and it's the expectation. But as a champion, you understand that there's no such thing as losing. It's winning and learning. And part of that learning process is understanding when my new journey begins, when I don't win. And for you, not winning the Olympic trials and not representing us at these Olympics, you got something that's even more remarkable. Being able to step into a job as historic, as prestigious as the Oklahoma State wrestling head coach. I mean, how is that for you? What happened? Was this something that was on the radar that you were working on in the back before heading into those Olympic team trials?
No, I wasn't. I was focused on training. I was focused on competing. I had every intention to go and represent the United States this year. But like I was alluded to earlier, John Smith, had this job for 33 years. So the big jobs in wrestling, college programs, like they're long tenured, and this is my entire life. I'm 33 years old. My entire life, John Smith has had this job. So he retired a couple weeks before the Olympic trials, and the job was unfilled. And after I lost at the trials, you're going through those stages of you're grieving, you're trying to figure out what's next. You're like, shoot, like it's not something I haven't, something I had, felt, in a really long time. I'm very fortunate to compete at a high level for a really long time. And I got a call. I got a call from Oklahoma number, and I went to voicemail, and I listened to it, and it was the athletic director, and I'm like, dang, this is when I told my wife, I'm like, hey, Oklahoma State just called, and you're interested and want to sit down for an interview. And my wife and I had talked about college wrestling coaching, but it's college wrestling coaching is not. You're not just coaching wrestling. You're CEO of a program. I mean, there's expectations. There's a lot of things that go outside. It's not just coaching. If you want to just coach wrestling, you're a club coach or you're an assistant coach, but a head coach, there's a lot that goes into that. So I think prior to this job, it wasn't something that I was like really, I wasn't, desiring to go be a head coach. But I'd always said, man, there are a couple places that you have to think about. Because there are times that you can impact wrestling, you can impact individuals, you can change a sport of wrestling, you can really have, it can make a difference. and Oklahoma State is one of those programs, and so when they called, I'm like, all right, let's listen. I'm at a crossroads in my career, let's see, what does it look like? Do I coach? Do I continue to compete? Do I retire? Like, what do I do? Sat down and we left that interview, and they left very confident that I was their guy. And, at that point, it's just, I've been living in State College, been part of the Penn State program for 15 years. And you got a lot of things there, and but the job was moving quickly, and had to make a decision and decided to take this job, and very challenging because it's hard when you go from being at Penn State to taking the job at a program, definitely very much a rival program. Maybe not right now, but it's going to be one down the road. You go from being like the guy that everyone loves to being guy that's you gotta get out of town, But it wasn't like that. I mean, obviously it was pretty good, but there wasn't a lot of closure. That was the thing that was really hard. I had these relationships for a long time, and made the decision to take the job. I was on a plane down here for the press conference. You don't even have time to get back to people or let people know, because the news was going quick. So it was hard. There's some things in there I wish I would have done a little different. I wish I would have communicated some things a little differently. But I was like, I just lost. I was kind of in a emotional state a little bit there. I see this great opportunity, for my career and for wrestling, in a different way, and decided this was the best thing for me and my family, and took the job. And I was down here right away. My family was still back in Pennsylvania for almost 2 months. Which was really challenging, but now we've been here. We've been here at the program. We've been getting a lot of progress done this year, and it's a big thing. You go from training to coaching, very different mentalities. You're still competing at a high level. Obviously, competing every day. We have a lot of ground to make up to be competitive at the level that the program's expectation is, and what our expectation is, what the athlete's expectation is. But you're not competing yourself anymore, so you're, I'm in the room every day wrestling with the guys, and I think the benefit of us and a young staff is, we can really show them at a high level, what's it going to take to be the best, and it's if you're beating us as coaches, then you're ready, and I think there's no going to be what if, like, where athletes that come to Oklahoma State, they're not going to wonder, man, am I good enough to be a national champion? Am I good enough to be a world champion? We're going to be able to help them, guide them, on and off the mat, the mentality, the requirements, the training. So that part, I think, was what I looked at as a really fun opportunity. And been in this job a couple months, and it's been everything that I thought it would be. It's very fulfilling, seeing those kids and how they're getting better, and looking forward to this season getting started.
Now, you mentioned things were moving quickly, and of course, after suffering a loss like that, I'm sure that was hard to deal with, and you're going to be emotional. You're trying to figure out what's the next phase, and then this pops up. And like you mentioned, it's very quick, very quick. Things were moving quickly. How was that conversation with, essentially the man that came and sat in your living room and said that, hey, I want you to come wrestle for me. I don't know if Cael does that anymore, but essentially having a conversation with this man, how was that you were going to a rival school?
Yeah, it was, I think it's just I obviously have the utmost respect for Coach Cael, and he impacted my life, right? He was the guy that I watched wrestle as a kid, and I'm like, I'm gonna wrestle like that guy. I want to wrestle for that guy, And when you think about a career, you really can't. If you're Coach Cael, right? You can't say, man, it was like the way you hope that it happens, right? The other coaches there, Coach Casey and Cody, Varner, and these guys had been a big part of my life and my career. They were my mentors, my friends. They were my coaches. And the longer I was there, the more that you have a different approach on things. I wasn't just an athlete towards the end, and I wasn't a coach. I was kind of like in the middle. And I was still training at a really high level. It's hard to walk away because I was competing. I just had my most dominant tournament of my life in 2023. I teched and pinned my way through the tournament, world champion. So in a way, I had one of the best tournaments I had. But the training leading up to it was definitely not what it had been in the past. And I think this year those things start to kind of catch up to you. And so I think towards the end, if that's a conversation, it's like, hey, I'm not a coach here, and I'm probably, there's really not an room for me to be a coach, and I don't want to train anymore, and this job came available, and I really need to think about it. And, we talked about it, and, he didn't want me to go, and nobody did. Nobody wanted me to go. And I wasn't looking to leave. I wasn't like I was actively looking to leave the program, but you're trying to see what's in the best for your family and for your career. And, knowing this job was, these jobs are, these coaches stay, these big programs for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So if there was a time to really consider this job, it was now. And my position was, hey, if I decide to not take this job, then I'm going to go in a different path, and I'm probably not coming back to college wrestling. I was going to go do something else. But the more I thought about it, the more I was just like, man, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, and I just kept thinking, like, man, I am so grateful that, Oklahoma State's a place that every candidate, it's a job that every single person in wrestling is like, that's a job that they want to have, and it was a job that, I was just really excited about. I was excited about the opportunity to take the job. So I think that was what it came down to. And I think it's hard. You got to make it for the right reasons. And I think some people, obviously were close to me, were just, making sure like, hey, is it something you really want to do, or is it just something you want to do right now? And I'm like, no, this is something I want to do. I think I was built to coach wrestling. I think I was built to make an impact on people. I did it the way I competed. The way I competed changed people's perspective of wrestling. It changed people's perspective on how to compete. I competed very furious. I scored a lot of points. I made it very fun and exciting. And I think college wrestling needs that right now. It needs more of that. And I hope to have that impact on people. And I think that was a leaving kind of conversation I had with the coaches. And I just said, hey, I hope to have the impact on people that you guys have had on me. You've changed my life, the way I think, the way I compete, and super grateful for that. And I hope that this doesn't change, our friendship and our relationship, moving forward. It just creates a little more competition in the space, and, we can go and make college wrestling pretty fun to watch. And,
right.
Ultimately just the decision that I made, and, I'm really, and I'm just really excited. I enjoy coming to work every day, and it's a fun thing.
I can imagine growing up in Dallas, and obviously wrestling, which was the marquee sport in Texas. I knew all about the Texas-Oklahoma rivalry and just how deep and how rich the culture of wrestling is in the state of Oklahoma, especially these premier programs like Oklahoma State or the University of Oklahoma. So yes, 100%, I understand it. But take me through this timeline here, because this seemed that it happened very fast to where I get text messages, because obviously I'm not in following wrestling day to day, but I still do get a message and an update from some of the greats, some of my guys before, like Daniel Cormier and Sean Bunch and Angel Escobedo and these guys. So I did get the update. Someone just got the Oklahoma State job, and it's David Taylor. So take me through that timeline of just lost at the Olympic finals trial, and we're flying down to Stillwater for a press conference.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember exactly the days. So they called me, and it was a week from the time they called me to when they could come visit, right? Because they, the group that came and visited me, that was when they could come. So that part was challenging because as soon as I got contacted, I told, my inner circle of people, the coaching staff that, hey, I've been reached out to. I'm gonna take the interview. I'm gonna listen to what they have to say, and I had a very clear mind and perspective of like what I think was necessary. I didn't ever want to go to a program just to take a head coaching job, right? Just to be a head coach. That's not
Right.
what I want to do. I want to go somewhere and win. So I think this is a place that has won historically, has the ability to win, and I think I had some very clear perspective, in the interview. But during that time, that was a hard week, because I'm like in limbo, like, well, are you in? Are you out? Are you taking the job? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to be as upfront with you guys as I possibly can. But definitely something I'm interested in. I'm thinking about it. There's some things that definitely need to happen for this to happen. It's not going to just, but
Right.
It's not going to just happen. So we had the interview, and it went really well. They left, pretty, I think, confident that I was their guy. And then there was some back and forth, just the way that those things
Negotiations.
happen. And then I don't know, it was a couple of days later. I think it was like 48 hours later. I decided to take the job, and then the release goes out on their their social media. But it was crazy. So in wrestling, the last big major coaching change was when Cael Sanderson went from Iowa State to Penn State. But that was before social media was a thing. So this one, people were tracking. People were tracking the flight from Stillwater to State College because people had heard that I was going to take this interview. So people were documenting the flight landing, and people were speculating if I was going to take the job or not. So there was a lot of chatter and excitement, and then I accepted the job, and I was down the press conference the next day.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break from our interview with the amazing David Taylor to thank our sponsors and our partner, Underdog Fantasy Sports, for sponsoring the show. Their pick'em game lets you flex your fighter IQ by letting you choose higher or lower on a variety of fighter stats like significant strikes, knockout, and takedowns. And here are our picks for this weekend's UFC Fight Night, Taboria versus Spivak 2. Write our picks or even mix it up between sports and players because Underdog has the selection for every major sports there is. And remember, guys, right now, all new users to Underdog will receive up to $250 in bonus cash and a pick'em special by using code P4P. That is pound for pound. Underdog is available in 30 plus states, including California, Texas, Arizona, and Florida. Support the show and click the link down below in the description to get started. Thank you, Underdog Fantasy, for supporting the show. All right, David. Now, like you mentioned earlier, you were in this period of limbo to decide you taking the job because I can understand that is a very tough time to be because I've had to make some decisions myself from wrestling or making a transition from wrestling out of wrestling. Now, for yourself and watching, I don't know how well you follow MMA or previous wrestlers from the sport of wrestling transition into MMA, but for you watching, wrestlers go into the sport of mixed martial arts, and you have an actual teammate, Bo Nickal, that has decided to make the switch into mixed martial arts. Was that ever something that you considered? Going MMA, or was it something that was far off the radar?
No, I was definitely heavily considering it. Like I said, I think after that fulfillment in Tokyo, you're just like kind of figuring out like, do I want to keep wrestling? If I do it, you need to do it at a high level, or do I want to move on? So I dabbled a little bit. I went out to Factory X with Mark Montoya a couple of times.
Really?
Spent some time out there. Training and I really liked it. I kind of at the time I had a plan. I'm like, I'm gonna train, and I'm gonna, when I am done wrestling, I'll make the transition to MMA. Feeling that, being older, like I didn't want to go through that long journey, that long process, and realize like if I decide to do this, it really is probably an expedited route. And if that's the case, you're going to be, there's no easy, like work into it. Like you got to be ready to go, and I think when it kind of came down to it, I wasn't really prepared to start over in my career and take that longer route, the developmental route, and, learn and get ring time. And yes, I follow it. I follow it pretty closely. I mean, I pretty much watch every single fight.
Right.
I think it's super fun to watch, and I decided that wasn't the path that I wanted to take, but I definitely considered it, for sure.
That's so interesting. I always wondered that with some of you guys. So if you were going over to Factory X, did you get a chance to spar?
I did. I mean, I wasn't, obviously, I didn't really know what I was doing, but yeah, I did get to spar a little bit. I mean, they were nice to me. They could have definitely beat me up a lot more than they did, but yeah, it was fun. I mean, I remember getting punched in the face for the very first time, and I was like, you kind of get a little like exhilaration. You're like, whoa, this is kind of wild. Like, it's like, this is kind of crazy, but yeah, it was fun. There was a lot of good people out there. It's a great gym. They still keep in touch with the guys there, and yeah, it was fun though.
Yeah, that's you're absolutely right. It's a crazy transition to when you actually get in there and you spar for the first time and get hit, because as much as tough and as hard as wrestling is, it's still kind of controlled in a certain sense, to where you're not being punched, you're not being kicked, you're not being kneed in the head. So there's still an element of danger that's not there. But when you step inside a cage or you step inside a room and you're sparring, how was that? How is that feeling for you? Because it's like, I know how it felt for me. It's like, whoa, I feel naked here because I'm not protected in any way. I'm not controlled. In wrestling, we can't punch, and we're punching here. How was that for you?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best kind of like thing. You feel like vulnerable all the time, because in wrestling, at the point where I was, like, you're in control pretty much all the time. You might get taken down, but you're not, it's like those other things, and you're seeing all this new stuff that you've never seen before. You're getting your distractions. I mean, you're thinking about punches, and then you're getting kicked, and all I'm thinking about is I used to get a takedown, get on top, so it's just, what I thought was really cool about it, and what was exciting to me, was it's just like, wow, this is a whole new sport that it kind of seems like there's endless evolution to it. In wrestling, you get to a point where you pretty much do what you do. There's only so many high crotches and single legs and double legs and ankle picks. There's not a lot of variation to it. Whereas there, it's like, man, there is so much. The sport has evolved, and it continues to evolve so much. And that was what, to me, being, someone that I like to be challenged. I saw that challenge. It's like, that was what I left. It was like a kind of an awakening thing. Like, if you don't do it, if you don't spar or go and do that, it looks like, oh, there's punching each other, but there is so much movement and strategy and tactic. And yeah, it was pretty incredible. I mean, MMA fighters are tough dudes, and but there's a lot of skill that I think goes underappreciated. I think it's very, very technical sport.
Right. So since you're a fan of the sport, is there who are your fighters that you've kind of kept your eyes on throughout this process, and who is your favorite fighter that you love to watch?
Oh man, Diego Lopez right now is my favorite fighter. I remember his first fight that he had with that Evlov guy.
Evlov, yes.
He's like, oh my gosh, this guy's just a threat everywhere. And he hasn't stopped, as like he's getting more, he keeps answering the bell, and he's an exciting guy, and I think it's pretty wild, think about, how did this guy lose? Who was beating this guy earlier in his career, right. And now he's on fire. And so he's really fun to watch right now. All the wrestlers. All the wrestlers. I root for all of you guys. I think it's a brotherhood. You go out there and you got a striker, you got a wrestler, you're rooting for the wrestler. And I think MMA is full of them now. So,
right.
Yeah. I don't know. I just like watching. Just like anyone else. I'm just a casual fan. And I enjoy watching it.
Yeah, and obviously the progress of Bo Nickal, and are you following him, and how do you feel about his progress right now, where he's at in the UFC in his career, And do you feel like it need to be fast tracked, or you feel like he's at the right spot right now?
Well, yeah, and I think that's a good example. I think they're doing it right with Bo. I think Bo's doing it right. I think it would be very easy to get lured into the excitement of just jumping into more fights and bigger fights. And I think there's an element of, Bo is he's taking a professional approach, and he's learning and he's taking his time, and it's going to pay off for him down the road, right? It's going to be the extra, the ring time that he's getting and the experience, I think is really valuable. So, but obviously he's a superstar. He's got all the makings to be a superstar in the UFC, and I think doing a good job of building him up. But I think he's kind of getting to the point where there's probably going to be a step up in competition, I would imagine. And there's a lot of guys in that middleweight division that are pretty tough. He's the hot name. Everyone wants to call him out because they know that that's kind of be a stepping stone for him. So just being patient, keeping his head and, just taking it one fight at a time. I think that's just probably the best approach for him.
You're absolutely right. It's something that we've talked about time and time again. I think the UFC is doing a great job with him. And I think he's being smart as well, of understanding that, hey, I don't need to just jump into that fight because, like you mentioned, it's very easy now when you're exposed to the whole world. It's very easy to say, oh, I want that fight, I want the title too soon. And then you get in there and you meet a guy that can defend a shot and just a little more polished and seasoned with certain skills. And now you take a loss and that sets you back so far. So I completely agree with you. I think it's great what he's doing. I think it's smart for him too, because it's easy to get there, but it's harder to stay there. And that's something that obviously you've done for a long, long time. You've won at every level, and obviously at college level. And to bring you back a little bit to college, your collegiate career, I don't know at this point, because I haven't been to state college. I don't know at this point, is Cael still getting in that room, putting shoes on and getting down on the mats with you guys? Because I know he does have a phenomenal staff. Is he still getting in there and wrestling with you guys?
Yeah, no, he looks forward to the wrestling, I would imagine, still. He definitely does. I can tell you that for a fact. He looks forward to wrestling, and he just had that style that he could make wrestling just look easy and effortless.
Yeah.
In a sport that's not easy, he could do it. He did it when he competed, and I think that's what's given him longevity, and still wrestling and being available. I think that's one thing you definitely learn from being around that wrestling staff for a long time. Is just that's the selfless approach as a coach. Like you're there to serve other people. I think that's what the staff has done better than any other staff, over the last 15 years. And, it's an approach that we have here now for sure. And understanding that, the importance of it, just being available for your guys. It's not about you anymore. It's about the guys. And, that's what as great of a wrestler he was and as great of a coach that he is, he's done that at a really high level, and I think that's something that definitely, is going to hopefully make me a good coach is realizing, like he did, competing, but then being able to flip that switch and be able to help others the way that he helps people.
Right. Now, I love the competitiveness of this. And how often did you get to wrestle with him and against him in the room?
Quite a bit. I wrestled him quite a bit. Casey Cunningham was, he was a guy that I spent a lot of time with. Just early in my career, I came out of high school when I was really talented, for sure, really talented. But I think from a mental toughness standpoint, it was an area that I definitely could have improved in. Because things were relative, I wouldn't say they were easy because I trained obviously really hard, but I wasn't really pushed to that level a lot. And when I first got there, that was an element that, Coach Casey definitely took some pride in, like made me tough, and I think that was, we developed a really close relationship during that period of time, and, Cael had that style where, he beat you, but he beat you because it was technique, and he roll you around and stuff. Where Casey beat you, torture you. He take you down. You don't give up one takedown. So the last takedown, you give up the whole practice. So I think the balance of those two. I wrestled them a lot, long, my entire career. From start to finish, I wrestled them quite a bit.
I mean, it's and I asked that because I I did get an opportunity to wrestle Cael. I believe this was a year where he was coming back and trying to go get a medal for us. And it wasn't great. It wasn't great.
I've seen that video.
Yeah, of course, everyone loves to pull it up because when they talk about wrestling, that video comes up. But yeah, it was exactly what you said. Of course, the mystique gets to you, you know, but it was he beat you so easily on technique to where I'm okay. I need to get to the leg, get it to it hard, and potentially run off and try to finish this shot. But then he just kind of snaps you down. It's not hard, and he kind of just. It's almost like he just whiffs you by, gets on you. Just the trapped arm. He just kind of picked my body up, put me over the arm, and then just rolled me. Match was over. I was like, wow, wow, that just happened. I felt so bad the rest of that day because I couldn't believe how easy that was for him. But he just had that style to where he made wrestling look easy and it made it look so fun. And we saw that in you guys in the way that you were wrestling. And I would go, wow, that's just, he's making it look so easy to where you're not even straining. You're not fighting to try to grind this takedown out. It wasn't that grinding style. So I feel like he's instilled and implemented in some of you guys and all of the wrestlers that were fortunate enough to be around him and with him under his program, just a new way of wrestling as opposed to that old style of we got to grind everything out. We just got to get tough and grind it out. But it's a new style. And that's what I'm extremely excited about. And I can't wait to see how you're able to implement that in a program like Oklahoma State. Because for a while there, they were the new program that had the technique and the style with guys like Daniel Cormier and Chris Pendleton and Tion and all the and Tyrone Lewis and all these guys and the way that they wrestled to where now Penn State has kind of taken that lap. Now I'm extremely excited and I can't wait to see what you're able to do with that program. Before we go, one last question is, what do you think is the biggest thing that you've taken from Cael that you feel that you can implement in that Oklahoma State program to, in a very, very short time, make them extremely competitive?
I mean, you don't get to that level, as a competitor or as a coach. You do something different, right? There's something unique and different about you. It just is what it is.
Right.
But I think it's the competitive nature that, but also it's just everything truly is. It's just a game, right? It's a game. I think that was the way that I think Cael had a unique perspective on things that way. I was fortunate enough to, have a similar perspective, and it was about how many points can you score, and I always held myself to a standard of like, man, 8 points was a major decision. I'm not stepping on this mat and scoring less than 8 points. Like that's the type of dominance that I expected of myself when I stepped out there and competed. And similar, that's how Cael was when he competed, and I think having that competitive mentality, kind of being able to stay innovative, find ways to be innovative in a sport that can be very, very, every day is the same. Very much can be that way.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest way. And if you think about the parallels, when I went to Penn State, Coach Cael and that staff, they were 33, 34, 35 years old. Our whole staff is 33, 34, 35 years old. So I think it's just, things go in cycles.
Right.
I think we're in the beginning of a new era of wrestling. We're going to be able to wrestle guys and we have guys on our staff that can beat you down. We have guys on our staff that can, roll around and make it look effortless. So the kids on our team and the future guys that are going to be Cowboys, they're going to get exposed to a lot of things. Similarly, how we were exposed to a lot of things over the last 15 years. Right. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be an interesting competition, of like how can they've been so successful for so long, and we're just getting started, and it's going to be a fun competition, internally amongst our teams and externally when we're competing against each other. Just looking forward to that. I think it's gonna make college wrestling enjoyable. It's gonna move the needle. It's gonna make people excited to watch it.
Absolutely.
And it's just gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Who is on your staff? Because I know when you came in, did you basically just clean house and just bring in your whole team?
So Jimmy Kennedy is our associate head coach. Thomas Gilman is assistant coach, and then Tyler Caldwell, who's been here for the last 7 years, he's our assistant coach. And then Brian Pearsall was associate head coach at Penn. He's our recruiting coordinator. So we have a very, very seasoned staff. Obviously, when you're a new coach, it's just there's a lot of coaching wrestling is something that I know how to do. Wrestling, I know how to do that. But having some assistance with all the other things that go into it. Obviously, supportive administration is important, but our staff is very well rounded. But we're young, we're hungry, we're excited, and we're scrapping every day with the guys.
That's a phenomenal staff. And my man, TC, Tyler Caldwell, which most don't know, Tyler Caldwell was actually my roommate one year at the Olympic Training Center. So a guy that I came to know very well and like very well. So, I'm definitely going to try to make that trip down to Stillwater and check you boys out once you guys have a duel, if schedule permits me to come down.
Anytime you want to come, you're welcome. Let me know. I'd love to have you.
For sure, I'll reach out. Now, last question for you. Now, that duel, you guys march over to State College with your team, and you were there to compete with them, but you're on the opposite side. Do you think you were going to get praises, or do you think you were going to get boos?
That's a good question. I'll probably get a mixture of both. Probably a mixture of both. But I think, Penn State at the time was, they were looking for, success, and I was able to give them something to be excited about. And our team, was able to give people something to be excited about. It created this monster, right? It's pretty awesome, and I think similar down here, I think it just feels so similar to what it was like there 15 years ago. And so yeah, I'm sure when you go back there, there'll be people that are bitter and upset that I left. But also, I think deep down, there's a lot of people that obviously appreciated what I was able to do there. And but it's the nature of the beast, it just is. It is what it is. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. I think a duel between Oklahoma State and Penn State is something that needs to happen. Obviously scheduling permitting between the Big Ten, the Big 12, and what we need to do on the two premier conferences. But to have a non-conference duel like that, standing every single year or something, I think would be pretty remarkable. I think it's something that like people like yourself, you wrestled, and it's one of those duels that you hear about it, you're going to put on your calendar, you're going to watch it, and I think it's you think about the impact that it could have, it could be pretty special. So we just got to make it happen.
Absolutely. My man, it's you hit the nail on the head. It's one of those things like Cael marching back into Ames, knowing that, hey, I'm with a different team now. So it's special. It's one of those things that definitely has to happen. It's time. It's evolution, and you are the new guy to be able to step in and definitely carry on that torch as these superstar wrestlers going into a premier program to potentially carry them forward. My man, I can't wait to see what you do with this program. I can't wait to see what your team does. I'm excited. Again, in wrestling, obviously, it's been years since I really was buckled down and following. So I'm excited to see what the rivalries that come through this and what you guys do. Thank you so much for getting on here and speaking with us. Unfortunately, Triple C couldn't be with us. Olympic champion who also went the other route and went to MMA. But David, I appreciate you. The Magic Man now taking on Stillwater and going to turn that program around. Man, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.